Okay. I think, are those seats available right there? Does somebody want to come and sit in these seats? Might as well. And one up in front if anybody wants a seat in front. Nobody? Going once, going twice. Seat in front. No? Okay, can everybody hear all right? Yeah? Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Obviously, this is a topic that is of interest to a lot of people, so I just want to kick this off by saying thank you so much to Canon for letting us squat here and have this conversation and hosting us in this very important topic. Thank you to University of Utah for helping to provide such wonderful minds and hearts and talent and experience to the conversation. There's an intersectionality here that I think is rare, too rare. So I'm super grateful that we get to have this opportunity. I also just want to address those of you who might be coming from Los Angeles. I don't know how many of you are in town from that community, but a lot of us that even maybe not live there have a lot of community members who live there, and my heart goes out to you. And there's some resources that the Sundance Institute is providing for those in need. So please take advantage of those for yourselves or people that you love. So I have the great privilege of introducing our panelists. On the panel, we have two very talented film colleagues, each with very prestigious awards and recognitions for their work. Both are members of the Academy, both worked on films nominated for Academy Awards, and we're especially excited to have both films in this year's Sundance Film Festival. Chris Ahn, raise your hand, is a cinematographer who has shot many acclaimed films, commercials, and videos around the globe, including Capernaum, am I saying that right? Excellent. I'm so proud of myself. And Beirut, which won the jury prize at the 2018 Cannes Film Festival. It's pretty good stuff right there. He just wrapped production on The Wife of the Pilot and The Man Who Sold His Skin.
Oh, no, that's a bit old. I just shot them a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, he shot those a couple of years ago, so I stand corrected. At this year's festival, he is the director of photography on the premiere, All That's Left of You. Please go check it out. Christina Oh is a film producer, best known for producing the 2020 film Minari, which I don't know if you've seen it. It's a beautiful film. Earned 6 nominations at the 93rd Academy Awards. We're proud that the film debuted in the 2020 Sundance Film Festival, winning both the U.S. Dramatic Grand Jury Prize and the U.S. Dramatic Audience Award. This year, she's joining the festival as the producer of the U.S. Dramatic Competition film Bubble and Squeak. Congratulations, that's fantastic. Thank you for making the time to be here today, Chris and Christina. We also have 2 mental health experts from Huntsman Memorial Mental Health Institute at University of Utah. Michelle Pace, yes, and I just have to do a shout out for Huntsman. It's changed the game in this state. It's changed the narrative around mental health. It's incredible resources. I'm so thankful and grateful that we now have that as a resource for our communities. Sorry, I got distracted there by that. Michelle Pace manages care teams, projects, and staff. Michelle's colleagues describe her as an extremely compassionate and a true peacekeeper with impressive negotiating skills. You're about to be asked to come on every set that ever was. So when situations get tense, they call in Michelle. Also joining us is Jake Van Epps, PhD, that's fancy, who is the Associate Director of the Resiliency Center at the University of Utah Health. Jake thinks deeply about team dynamics and how to improve them. He supports the mental health of clinical care providers, which is such an important part, and again, of the conversation. Somehow they're supposed to absorb these things without having the help that they need. So I'm really excited about that. He also focuses on building peer support skills that might help people respond to adversity and developing a supportive culture of well-being. Thank you for being here today, Michelle and Jake. So I just am taking sort of an informal poll right now. Can everybody in this room raise your hand if you're in the creative industries? Yeah. How many of you have ever had to navigate issues around mental health? Everybody. So this is a topic near and dear. I've been walking this earth for a few decades now, and I think that there's been great improvement in this conversation, but I think we also have a ways to go. So our hope today here is that if you hear things that you feel like you need to deploy into your professional environments, please do so. Please have the conversations, maybe even come back to some of our experts here and come up with some templates that should be a non-negotiable when you walk on set. I would like to start with a topic around harmony on set to begin with a question for the filmmakers. Why, personally, does this topic of harmony on set resonate for you? And how important is harmony on set for the success of a production?
Hi, everyone. So to me, harmony on set has to do with how much I feel safe and how much I feel that I can be creative and develop things without feeling a pressure from outside. And that's something that's collective, where I need the whole crew to feel this, like to be in the same flow and to create the same. I want to be in the same space so that I don't feel that I have to, I don't know, hide from someone or have to be there for someone. So it's to me like a swarm, or like just creating a group of people who together have the same vision to get to achieve a goal that's common.
So how do you establish that that shared narrative? You know, in terms of finding that common ground, is there a sort of technique or practice that you deploy to make sure you're on the same page to have that creative freedom?
I think casting the crew is the most crucial thing to me. Like really knowing who every person that's on set is. A lot of times it's also they become like very good friends and people who I take on to other films. The topics, like the films I had so far, are very like sometimes heavy topics, and we shot for long times abroad. So I travel a lot with crews who are not at home and who need to feel that we're a family. So it's about creating a village that I can take with me, and that where we just create a safe space where everyone just feels that if we're on set, it doesn't, like, there's respect and there's it's a space for everyone to just be able to give.
That makes sense. Christina?
So for me, making a movie in particular, or TV or any project, it's almost like sometimes it feels like summer camp. It's like a really intense, you go someplace, not home for anywhere from 3+ months, and you're intensely with this group of people every day, and then you wrap and leave the next day and probably almost sometimes never talk to them again. And it's like a weird thing to go through, I think, as a creative person. So when we are together, when you make a film, you kind of all have to, kind of like what Chris said, be in lockstep, because let's say something happened and you guys didn't resolve an issue properly, and your DP's upset or doesn't feel safe, or some PA is whatever. I don't know, like any multitude of those like situations can impact what ends up on the screen. So like people running late or people being upset, like, might make them less effective at their job. So I think for me, it's really important to as a producer too, you're like helming a project. You're like basically like a project manager, and everyone comes to you with their issues, and you got to like figure it out. And I always try and create a safe space for people to approach and like talk about issues. Or my goal is always to kind of create the safest environment, but inevitably things happen just because you're working with like a bunch of creative people that have opinions, and you have to like problem solve. But I think the best way is to just sort of discuss it. I've found just to kind of like not let things fester, or really just open up and maybe go get a coffee or something, which I think was really, really hard during like the pandemic times.
Yeah.
Like I've from my end, have never seen more interpersonal conflicts on set than I had during the pandemic.
That's really interesting. I mean, that's a cautionary tale and probably instructive in terms of, why might that be, those personal connections being sort of fractured during the pandemic, I want to get into some of the sort of technicalities of creating some of that harmony, that harmony and that shared language. What I'd love to know, as you both spoke of, is having practice before you enter a project and also as you exit, because of how much of yourself you put into this whole process, and probably a lot of the people you're around. Do you have certain techniques of self-care when you're going into a project and when you're coming out of a project, and maybe during?
For me it's like I try when I have a moment that's very important. Is when I decide to take a project. In the beginning, after reading a script, it takes me in a space, in a mind space where I feel that this is the force that will drive me through the project. So that's something that I feel is an inspiring moment that I keep thinking of when I'm in difficult situations. Just to go back to a place that I feel was inspiring at some point. And I listen to music in the morning, and I need some time in the morning before getting on set where I'm just alone, where I just think of what we've done so far, and what just to be able to have a balance. Because once I get on set, I have not 1 second of break. During lunch, usually I don't eat. I just nap, or just I'm on set and I think of what to do next, and just stay in that space. Yeah.
Sounds so lovely. I think I'm just pure chaos. I'm like, we have to go. I don't have any I don't think I have any specific. I was sitting here trying to be like, do I have any? I don't know. I think I read something, I want to do it, and then it's sometimes takes years, or sometimes it's we have to get this going in a month. And so I think I'm much more if it happens, it happens, and just be more accepting or open to something resonating with me. And then in terms of production, I literally I could not even tell you. I wake up and then I'm racing out the door a little bit. I wish I was a little bit more, had some sort of ritual. This last production though, I did bring my dog, which was so awesome. Because it forces you to take a minute. I'd have to, I'd have to take her on some walks, and she also loved it. And bringing her to set, our entire crew would be so happy to see her, and she would eat all their food. It was great.
Probably a therapy dog on set.
She kind of
right?
was.
Yeah.
It was weird. It's
I'm
dogs
all for
and
it.
babies.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
No, you spoke also about the collision of a lot of people with creative minds, who all come together. Which I like the word harmony in a certain way, because they're all different notes, and a lot of different people bring different notes to the conversation. And so I'm wondering, in terms of two people can read a script and see different things. Is part of the pre-production discussion around the project, a way to make sure that some of those disagreements or conflicts that might come up are ferreted out before it's game time. What is your pre-production process like to establish common ground creatively?
So when I read something, I then typically meet with the filmmaker, and then very heavily involved in sort of casting the crew or finding the crew, and then yes, during prep it is like, how do we do this? Like on the recent movie we did, we had to build a church out of hay. I don't think I'm giving anything away, but it was honestly like, how are we gonna do this? And are we using real hay? And it can't be outside for too long. We got into weirdly many church building arguments. Or like everyone had a different idea, or it was like super expensive, or is there more economical ways to do stuff? And I actually don't think having disagreements and arguments are necessarily a bad thing. It's always how you resolve it or how you communicate through it, because everyone's a human being. We all have emotions. Sometimes there's also a million other things going on, and you just never know if someone's just upset because they didn't get enough sleep, or something happened in their personal life, and it's just a tough moment. And communicating in that moment was a little more difficult than the next moment. So I think, like, for me, when things get tense, I try not to be like, oh, this is some weird personal thing, whether it's between two people or me and someone else. It's just always like, let's take a minute. And what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve? And let's refocus our energy on solving that. Because I'm sure you all have experienced being in like a fight or an argument. It can escalate so quickly and then be something very hurtful or actually aggressive in a manner that you didn't intend. So typically we do try to during prep work through a lot of any sort of thing that could arise or any sort of creative differences, and work together as a team to solve them. Because when you are shooting, right, like this, Chris, like your days are scheduled to the minutes sometimes, and you can't really delay. So we try to have all those things sorted out before to prevent further conflicts.
I totally agree, and to me it's in prep it's a lot about answering core questions of why, like just answering each detailed question that we could have later on, but understanding the core of every thought, so that once they arise on set, it becomes a discussion of why do you just going to the core of each issue to find the better option, the best solution for everyone. So there's no attacking or it's just understanding or analyzing the issues. Yeah,
that makes sense. We are often very passionate around the stories we want to tell, especially when it comes into the independent space. We're usually a little overworked and a little underpaid, but we get fed on the creative, right? The necessity for these stories to get told. So passion will often arise. How do you navigate moments that when conflict happens and it's about the work, and yet the temperature escalates? What are some of the things that you might do in that moment to de-escalate, but also make the person who is needing to be heard feel heard?
To me, there's the stress of time on set where I cannot really give time to people, if in case something like that happens, where I just let them know that we will have time to discuss that, but for that moment I need to go through that process I'm going through with people who can come with me, and then try to have that space with that person at some point later, but not on set or whenever there's time for it.
Yeah, if it arises on set, it's a little different. Sometimes it's something that it kind of depends on the situation, actually. So if it's something that needs to be addressed right away, of course, I'll address it. But I think the way it's like kind of like, hey, let's just take a minute. I think that's a thing that I've learned as I've grown older is responding versus reacting to something. So, you know, we all have like just like the first thing we want to do or say that pops into your head, and sometimes that's like not the best thing, or it's like it could be you're just like lashing out at like emotionally, like out of anger or fear or whatever situation is happening. And so for me, the biggest lesson I've kind of learned and try to practice is like just take a second and respond to the situation rather than react to it. Oftentimes it'll be like, yeah, we can't address this right this minute on set, but maybe we can do it at wrap. Or, you know, I always try and like, if it is like a one-to-one personal thing, or like two people aren't getting along, or there's some sort of production issue, like pull them away, because I think oftentimes negative energy kind of is like cancerous in a way. Like if people sense that it's like really hostile for a minute, it kind of like makes everyone like a little bit more on edge. And so trying to maintain like a level of harmony or peace on set is important to me. And I try to like, you know, if two people are having a thing, like just be like, can you guys go elsewhere or do this at the end of the day? Like, I know this is important, but let's focus on our day and then address this when we can at a more appropriate time.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I want to ask one more question to you guys, and then turn it over to our mental health experts, and then have more of a sort of conversational approach to a couple of these things. Often when you're, you know, these, as you guys might tell, that the circumstances on set is sort of like a lot of other work situations on volume 11. And the intimacy that's forged is quick, and the, you know, the nomadic nature of what a lot of us do, you know, creates certain tendencies to be a little bit of an escapist in certain ways. It seems like one of the foundations that you both are addressing too is how to speak and create from your truth. And sometimes, especially if you're early career, you convince yourself that you have to be someone else in order to be successful. If you're a soft-spoken person, somehow, in order to be a director, you have to be loud. And it seems like both of you have forged your path through your authentic selves and voice. Is that something that you came into, or is that something that you arrived with and sort of were able to maintain?
So when I started, I started shooting commercials when I was 23. So the people working with me were much older, and it was in the Middle East, where people were also very, sometimes harsh. And I had the power of just saying, "You're fired," and I did that sometimes. Yeah. But at some point, I realized that's not a way that's sustainable. So at some point, I just realized instead of attacking them, if I just act that, like, if I just help or just show them a way of being better, sometimes it started working, that people would just be more motivated and do things differently. Instead of just demanding or commanding, I would just go and show them
the way,
and be like part of the electrician's crew, and tell them, oh, that's how I would do it. And in a way, it just creates much more. Suddenly, I realized people were loving me and wanted to give more, and I would get people back. So that changed a lot to me, of just making everyone feel that we're on the same level, and it's collective, and that I appreciate their job as much as then they appreciate mine.
Yeah, that's a great way to diffuse some of the power dynamics that can come up too. And I think, you know, if a lot of us have experienced that yelling is actually incredibly inefficient, and it sends shockwaves through people, and then they're not working from their own center and their own power. They're working out of panic and fear. Which costs time and money, turns out. Christina?
Yeah. Am I answering the first question about
Your authentic self
I
coming
don't-
into your own.
Yeah.
You can answer whatever you want. I mean,
No, I'm
anything
just
that,
like
you know.
I don't know. I think I just did what I do. I'm like a fairly awkward person, so it's like I don't know, becoming more comfortable with that. But
We'll talk about that a
I
little
kind of
bit.
just
I mean,
came like this. I had this out of the box, you know. I would think my biggest thing starting out too, because I started fairly. I landed a job fairly young, and then found myself in higher level positions or situations at a much younger age than a lot of the people around me. And I think it did for a minute, like, screw with me, because I was like, oh, this is so weird. I'm Korean, so I have a very, like, weirdly deferential, like, age thing. Like, it's a like, the culture is very deferential to adults. And elders, and I think for me it was like a little hard to be like, I'm a boss of these people. It was weird, but I don't know. Now I'm old and I'm kind of like whatever.
I beg your pardon.
And like or older.
Yes, indeed.
And I've come into just my own self in that way. And I think the biggest thing is it just, when you're working on a project and you kind of just have to do it. And it's like really takes everything from you. And I don't really have time anymore to like worry about those kind of things. I think the greatest thing as I've come into my more authentic self is having learned a lot of the things that I try to just practice in life, whether it's kind of like how you deal with someone inexperienced, or you could just fire them, or you could teach them and make them better. I think a mark of a good leader that I like, some of the best people that I've learned from at that level, it's rarely about, it's almost like a confident leader isn't a yeller, they listen to everyone and they truly just let the best idea win. It doesn't matter whoever it came from. And I've worked with a few directors like that, and their movies are like so much better for it because they could put their ego aside, and everyone has an ego and that's totally fine, but they're able to put it aside when we're faced with a problem and really listen to, maybe the DP has an idea, or, sometimes it's even like someone random, like the line producer or an AD who's just like, I think this, we could solve this way, and you listen, and then they take that kernel of a solution and they're like, actually, that's a really good place to start. Let's actually, and then the DP will be like, yes, I can work with that and like come up with a solution. And I think a director could be like, no, that wasn't my idea, so I don't want to do it. But I think the best leaders are people that listen and communicate and try and look beyond the issue and talk to people rather than being sort of tyrannical.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, some of them are geniuses too. So it's like hard to like, you have to like deal with it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's, you bring up two things, and then I promise I'll turn it over to you guys. But you bring up two things that I think are really interesting. One is how to allow for some of that, those cultural imprints on set without feeling like you have to get rid of them. That some of that information that has made you who you are is important to allow on set. And the interesting thing sometimes, if you're on set and you throw out to everybody, this is the story we're telling today, and whether it's your director, your producer, your person who's doing craft service, they suddenly have buy-in to the story, and you might just find that somebody comes up with a wonderful idea, because a lot of times problems happen, and they'll feel like they're as implicated as anybody else, which, so I like what you're saying about that. I would like to turn it over to you guys from the mental health perspective. Must be kind of interesting to hear some of these dynamics, and I would love to hear a little bit of what you might think are certain kinds of techniques and practices you would deploy into these situations that are high stress and a multitude of personalities.
Do you want me to go first? Yeah. So first, I think it's so interesting how across industries, healthcare or film or any industry, there are just fundamental truths about leadership and human dynamics. And so one thing that strikes me about you two as filmmakers, I mean, it's absolutely clear that creating a space of psychological safety is important, and that treating all human beings, no matter where they come from or their positional power, the same with dignity and respect, that goes a long way. And people know what you think about them, whether you intend to tell them or not. If you respect them, they can tell. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in, but those things matter, and they do create teams that can get into a flow state and create meaningful work. And then something else that has struck me about this conversation is the intention setting, specifically stating intention of what you're trying to accomplish. And I love how you described, saying every scene, what is the core what is the message you're trying to reach. I think that transparency and returning back to intention as a leader is just so invaluable and will yields incredible results for the long term. So I'm struck by that.
Yeah, thanks. And I think I observed quite a bit of the same things that you did, and really a lot of wisdom of leadership between y'all up here on the stage. I was really impressed to hear. A couple things that kind of stood out to me were, Christopher, how you kind of always go back to your meaning and your purpose as your kind of guardrails as you navigate the challenging process of getting through a film. Both of you kind of stated how on set sometimes you don't always have the time to kind of get fully involved into some of the emotions that are coming around. And I think when that stuff arises, it's critical that we acknowledge the person. Sometimes you were saying, Christina, how it's important to recognize that people's context is sometimes come into play in the workplace. And sometimes we don't have to feed into that energy, and we can just say, I acknowledge how you're doing and we'll talk about it later. I think that's a really masterful skill on how to deal with high emotions in the moment. So. Yeah,
because it lets the pressure out,
right.
And so, you can both make your day and make sure that somebody feels seen or heard. We're in a bit of an unprecedented time when it comes to mental health crisis across the board in multitudes of generation. I think one of the things that is also clear is that there's stigma around it. And it seems like the necessity to be able to create a space where some of these things can be addressed. You can have some mental health struggles, and you can be very good at your job. And I think to be able to oxygenate that idea in an open space, and also have mechanisms, if you have coworkers who you can see are visibly struggling, whether it's substance abuse, which is sometimes rampant in our industry because, we're tricking our bodies into doing incredibly, counterintuitive things, or, the nomadic nature of being away from your touchstones. I'm curious about if you have seen in recent years a little bit more of an uptick in what might be, pandemic related in terms of people's mental health crisis, or if you have mechanisms on set by which people can go and get the help that they need.
I'll just speak to the uptick in mental health illness. I don't know that there has been an uptick, but the pandemic definitely made therapy sexy in a way that it has never been before. I mean, it was unheard of for many types of people to reach out to any mental health practitioner. But once that pandemic hit and those doors shut, a lot of stress was created, as you alluded to. And so that is one benefit of the pandemic that came out of the pandemic. But yeah, and I guess I would just speak to, as few barriers as you can have to make that initial step is vastly important in capturing people when they are feeling brave enough and strong enough to actually ask for help. And so as low barriers as you can have on set. And I don't know what that looks like in your industries. I'd be extremely interested to hear, actually.
I actually was trying to figure out a way during the pandemic to have kind of like a mental health like counselor or something, because I think, but it was tricky because the studio or the networks we were working with like didn't want to do that, because they were a little bit worried. I think they were worried about liability, which I was like, okay, so you're not going to help address an issue that could probably be mediated, or someone can speak to somebody and maybe help work through something, but instead you're just not. And like, this is what I mean by during the pandemic. It's also because like you couldn't take people out and have a drink with them or get a coffee or go on a walk or something, or just be and listen to each other, and you could only see people like from here up, and you had to be like 6 feet away. I mean, the protocols were insane when I think back about it now, but like, it did create this weird thing, this weird distance and this weird sort of discordant vibe, and so many things popped up on set where had we just been able to like take them to dinner or something and have people see each other as human beings. Like, this guy has a family and he's got kids and he's, he works all day on set and then goes home and still has to like do stuff. So it was something that we was looking into, but the people that we were at the time, like we hit barriers that made it difficult for us to provide that. But I think there is some change now. Like, people are more open to having sort of on-set mediators and counselors, or at least access to someone. There's a lot more, you can call into a hotline and like report stuff so that it gets addressed. I think people do get worried on set to talk about anything because they're worried about retaliation or dynamics. And when you're dealing, typically a set's like 100 plus crew members, like there's bound to be issues that arise. I think it's very natural, but it is always nice to like come up with ways to try and help people. Yeah.
I would just second, again, the importance of the leader in setting the precedent that it's okay to talk to each other about things, and that psychological safety piece that you both clearly establish in your roles is so vastly important, because that when people are afraid, they won't take that next step, and then problems get bigger and bigger and bigger until it's a crisis state. So
yeah, that's what's so bananas around studios not wanting to bring in those protocols, because it's a lot more expensive when you have crisis. So I'm wondering if we need to, as a collective community, push for some of these earlier moments where we can bring folks like you all on to give people the tools of how to run their team smoothly, how to confront some of these issues. We do have some of those steps in prep, for in different ways, and maybe we need to be adding this to part of our process. I do think, one last little question before we throw it out to the audience. I think we're at about that time because I'd love to hear from a lot of you. Just back to what you were saying about having somebody, you don't know what somebody's lived experience is. You don't know what the morning was, where they're going home, what are some of the ways in which you do or wish you could maintain some of your personal relationships when you're in this industry? Have you figured out how to do that? Do you just tell everybody I'm disappearing for 2 months and please don't call me? Or, how do you approach that? Because I know can be very difficult.
You want to go ahead? You go. Yeah, I agree with you that actually this, like, having a position like that would be like really good, because it's a lot of pressure that I feel I cannot really share with anyone. And when it gets like coping with and we're also very sensitive. Like you feel that something's going wrong, and then, like you're saying, it escalates and becomes a catastrophe. And then, yeah, I don't know. To me, it is at the end just wrapping up by, like, it's important also to me to show a lot to the crew what we're doing and get them to see the process and understand, like, see the bigger picture and not just work day for day. And at the end, I do need time, like, to disappear for a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Permission time.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously having a phone makes things a lot easier and harder, because I think maintaining relationships, whether it's friends or partners or, other colleagues, I know when I go into a production, I do tend to, I just don't have the bandwidth to necessarily, like, keep track of everything, but I do try, because in a weird way it feels good for me to, I'm away and I want to stay connected, so I will make the effort to sort of either like text and be like, hey, can we catch up this weekend, or some with your loved ones or whatever. But it is hard. It's hard to have any sort of, like, normal life or schedule, and it often is sometimes it's very quick. I remember this movie we just did. I think I told the director, I was like, you might have to leave, like, in 4 days or something crazy, and for 3 months. So it's like you just pick up and go, and it's impossible for you to have, like, a one-on-one conversation with all your friends to be like, hey, I'm gonna go away for 3 months. I might not respond to text messages as quickly, but I love you. So it's a weird nomadic sort of life I think we have sometimes, and then when you get there, kind of like what I was saying earlier, you become like this. It's like intense camp, and you're just, like, with each other all the time, and you build these really crazy relationships. I think some of my closest friends are from set, and then some of my people that absolutely drove me crazy are from set, and some of those connections, you do bring them to your next project, or you'll see them again. And sometimes I'm just like, I had this weird moment when I left Estonia, because we shot this movie in Estonia, and I was like, I might never see this person again ever in my life. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna be here again or see them again. And it's like a weird thing. So it's not only like how to maintain relationships that you already have, it's like this weird thing of building a relationship during production and then it being, like, cut off, like, the next day, which is, like, a weird, I think, in terms of a mental health thing. Like, a lot of my friends who are producers or in production, when they come back home, it's hard for them to, like, sort of there is, like, a weird sort of reacclimation moment, where it's almost like you don't want to see anyone, you need some space, but at the same time you missed everyone, and then you miss the people that you were with every day. It's like a bizarre thing, but
yeah, it's there's a self-preservation that might also kick in terms of establishing too much intimacy, and sometimes knowing that you're not going to see that person again is a really good thing, and sometimes it's not.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it is good because you can be really vulnerable because you're like, oh, but But at the same time, like being vulnerable is so hard, and you're like, wait, I just told this person that I'll probably never see again, like my life story.
Yeah, I mean, I not that I've experienced this, but beware the showmans, because you can find people that you really connect to, and you think, oh my God, this is it, this is the one, this is give it a minute.
Yeah.
And after wrap, then you can have coffee and see if you like watching them brush their teeth. But that intimacy part is an important part of the discussion too, because it's a surreal environment.
I just want to add something. Because like the film that we're showing tonight, we were prepping for 5 months in the West Bank, and we were going to shoot in October, like mid of October, and we had the crew from Germany, from like a bit around the world, and some of them were Palestinian, and then we were forced to evacuate on the 10th of October, leaving all the crew that we've been working with for 5 months just back, and we were like, we're sorry, but we have to leave. So half the crew just left, and those people, like it is tough to just go and start again the same film with a different crew, knowing that, oh, I had colleagues, I had friends who invested so much and who created that film with me. So I don't know, I just learned to cherish each moment, also to just understand that it's a precious moment that I'm having with someone. I don't know when I'll see that person. I don't know if I'm coming back to a world that will still exist the way I left it. Like often on Capernaum, I went back to Beirut and I didn't find the people anymore. So it's nice to just be in the moment, I think, and give that love. And I think that's where beauty happens and creativity. So.
Yeah, Vivek Murthy, who is the U.S. Surgeon General, says that it's not the quantity of relationships that we have, but the quality of the moments that we have that make the biggest difference. And his entire professional career has been focused on combating chronic loneliness, which is one of the reasons why we think there was a rising tide of mental health concerns during the pandemic. And it turns out chronic loneliness is associated with the same bad outcomes, health outcomes, as smoking 16 or more cigarettes a day, and it's more prevalent in society. So it's a significant thing. And so if we're away from our family and friends and you're on this set and it's this really intense environment, those connections in that community that you build is a real protection layer against a lot of the stressors of life.
That makes sense. I do want to throw it out and to all of you, if you have some questions you want to ask. And I also just want to acknowledge our ASL interpreter over there, who's been working very hard to create a space that we all belong. So I appreciate that. Anyone? Question?
So I'll preface the question with 2 quotes I've learned. I'll preface the question with 2 short quotes. In a poker game, it said, I'm looking at you, Christopher, because of how we started the conversation, but it said, do not discuss politics or religion in a poker game. And then it was said, it was sermonized, that we only get to shalom, salam, through conflict. You don't get to peace unless there's conflict. That's how you achieve peace. So, my mission is to come to peace through cross-cultural efforts and through storytelling, through film, and actually building crews and international co-productions of Israelis and Arabs and Hollywood together. So is it reasonable that we can have mixed crews of very different cultural backgrounds and find the way that through the power of storytelling that we come to peace?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's crucial to just find a common ground and all be able to keep discussing and creating together. I think, like I said in the beginning, it's important to go back to the question of why and the core of everything. And based on that, I think we're all humans, and it's important not to lose that humanity and come back to each other.
Can we achieve it on a set when we got money concerns and this and that? Can we
I think I think no politics is good, but it creates also tension at some point. I think we have to all agree on, like, there must be a way of just knowing what you like. We have to. We need to be transparent and to have that intimate space. And to get there, I think we need to be able to also be able to talk politics together, to be able to achieve working together. We don't have to agree, but at least be able to discuss. Like, if we can discuss politics. Yeah, I think that's important.
Is the question specifically about politics, or are you asking if people can from different cultures can all come together and like is that a feasible thing?
Yeah, but I mean, certainly people of different cultures always, I mean, come together. Just as Americans, we're all coming from different cultures and worldwide. But I was asking specifically where there's conflict, if it's can we get North Korean and South Korean filmmakers working together?
So, just quickly, on our film, like the film that we're showing today, we had people, like we had Israelis, and it was very touching to see that they wanted to be part of that film, and there was for a long time people who were trying to avoid them and were like scared of them. And then at some point we had that situation of just going into a dialogue and be like, why are you, like, what's the reason that you're here? And suddenly it made, I don't know, it's like we had the nicest collaboration with them. But we had, like, we need to be able also to voice the fears and just go beyond that point of just having a wall between us. And I think it's important, like, it could be culture or politics or anything, but it's important to be able to say what you feel and have a response and understand what the other person in front of you, who it really is, and not project on the people something that you think is who they are.
Yeah, it helps with that, you know, having the common cause of telling the story and having those early discussions about what that story is and the kind of fibers that you want to ferret out in the story. You know, I think it allows for a more diverse community on set because you're all focused on this common cause, you know. And if you're not, if you don't want to tell the story, it's probably not your job. You know, don't take the job. Another question?
So just as an undergraduate student who, you know, I think for undergrads starting out, the types of sets and the types of productions we're on are all over the place, oftentimes very experimental. And I found it hard to actually set expectations early on. Like I've worked on a summer production where it was a lot of people on crew, it was their first time actually being on any kind of set. And, you know, the director and the other co-producer was really trying to elevate the experience and make things as professional as possible. So I'll ask, what might you do, you know, as the levels of production, as the levels of professionalism rise and crews grow larger, to set expectations and to communicate that to your crew?
That's a good question. It's kind of, I think you might have touched on it. Like it's intention. Like what do you intend to build? And then oftentimes, also someone told me how our brains work is that it focuses on the thing that you're thinking about. So this example that I came across was like if you're a skier and you're like going down, you're skiing or whatever, and if you're like, don't hit a tree, you're gonna hit a tree because that's all your brain is thinking about. Instead, if you say stay on the path, stay on the path, stay on the path, your brain will go there. And it's like, also, I learned this when I was getting my license, when I was like 15 or 16. My driving instructor was like, don't look at what you're trying to avoid, look at where you want to go. Because when you're rounding a curve, like getting on a freeway or something, and I was like, what? That's insane. He was like, look ahead of the curve because that's where you want the car to go. And I was like, okay. He's like, your brain and body will do what it needs to get there and guide the car. And he's like, if you keep looking at the barriers, you're going to sort of start veering over there because that's what your brain's focused on. And it didn't click until like last year for me what that metaphor. I was like, this is kind of cool actually. So I think as we move through life, or like our intentions are kind of important. I'm realizing like focusing more on them and like having good ones, and then like setting that as an expectation or having that as an expectation, it will, like everything else will kind of follow. So yeah, I don't know if that's a good answer, but I don't really know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, you know, it all up and down the food chain, you know, whether you're in a small production. I think you're answering your own question, which is to set those expectations, to be able to have those conversations in advance, and to think, okay, how are we going to meet them? What's required to make those things happen so everybody feels a sense of satisfaction. It's hard to be on set and feel like you're not really telling the story, you're not doing the job. There's a lot of sacrifices that happen for people to come together and do this. And, you know, helping people to have that sense of satisfaction, I think, is super important. But we have time for, I think, one more question. I saw you first. I know you're maybe two more questions. Okay, go.
Okay, so thank you so much for the beautiful answers and for being so honest. And that is really my question too, about honesty and authenticity when you're on set, when you know that you have to navigate a difficult conversation or a conflict where there are opposing opinions to the point where somebody wants to leave and doesn't want to, you know, they throw in the towel, and you really want to make sure that the ship is not sinking. And you as a producer or DP or the head of department, how do you navigate moral injuries when you know the person is right? You know, the producers want to cut corners. How do you navigate your own honesty? Or did you ever have to lie to get through something?
I mean, I would actually like to throw it out to you guys too. I mean, give us some skills.
Well, one thing is that moral injury is really common in healthcare. It's, you know, anytime you witness or see somebody, or you have to do something that goes against your deeply held values. And I think that's hard to do. I feel like I experienced that at work myself with the organization, sometimes that I work with. And I think we have to be kind. We have to acknowledge the underlying values that the person is coming from and show that person that we respect it. And I think from that shared valued place, you can say things like, yeah, this isn't the greatest, and it's kind of the job that we have to do. So if you can acknowledge and have empathy and do emotional validation, I think it lowers the temperature quite a bit. People feel seen, heard, and valued, and sometimes they can get back to work. Certainly not always.
I'm going to throw our last question out to this young person right here.
Hello. First off, thank you so much for the talk and kind of sharing your experiences. I'm also an undergraduate student who's interested in filmmaking. I've had the privilege and honor of starting my first student documentary at my school, and I would imagine as a young filmmaker, it's definitely really daunting to kind of be on like one of your first big projects and trying to lead a big group of people, like a huge set. And sometimes it can definitely be really intimidating and also really scary. And sometimes I've had like thoughts of like kind of like imposter syndrome, where it's like you feel like sometimes it gets rough and it's like, oh, am I really the right person to do this project? Or like, is this like, am I really capable of doing this? And it's sometimes really severe like psychological barriers that kind of come to play, especially when you're given such like a huge role for a project. And so I wanted to open this up to all of you on like, if you have any suggestions or tips on kind of how to overcome that, and also kind of just to step back and rethink about that entire process.
The first thing I'll say is, yes, you are the right person to tell this story, right? And you know that, and when you know that, then that emanates, you know, so finding that center and sort of, you know, that resilience inside, because there isn't another you. So you get to be here and you get to have that seat at the table. But, yeah.
I was just going to say that, you know, I don't even call it imposter syndrome anymore, which kind of has the connotation of being abnormal or unusual. And I think everyone in this room has experienced a sense of imposterism at some point in their lives. And I certainly think, checking in with yourself, providing compassion to yourself when you make mistakes or you're struggling to learn is critical. But even beyond that, if people are feeling a sense of imposterism, I don't think it's just the individual's fault. I think you got to take a hard look at their context and the system that they're working in and say, why is this person unsure about themselves and how can we support them?
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I think curiosity is a really infectious thing, and I think people respect it too. We don't come here with all the answers, and if you can pause and say, "Oh, that's interesting. Let me think about this for a second," and sometimes that might mean I got to step away for a minute. Let me problem solve in a solitary space for a second. You get to do that too. And sometimes the answer will come maybe a little more naturally. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to do this and have this important discussion. And I hope that you, as creatives and collaborators, continue to have these discussions on your sets and perhaps anticipate some of these dynamics and demand more from the culture that we all subject ourselves to. Thank you so much.